December 19th, 1944. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, Versailles. The intelligence briefing had been clinical, almost academic, until someone asked the question Eisenhower had been avoiding. How long can the 101st Airborne Division hold Bastogne? The officer, calculating logistics, studied his notes. 4 days at current consumption rates. 5 if they ration ammunition to fewer than 10 rounds per rifle. The Germans attacking Bastogne outnumbered the defenders 3-1. The 2nd Panzer Division, Panzer Lehr Division, and 26th Volksgrenadier Division were closing from multiple directions. Weather had grounded Allied air support completely. Eisenhower stared at the situation map, where a red circle surrounded the small Belgian crossroads town 107 miles from Reims. Inside that circle, approximately 18,000 American soldiers from the 101st Airborne Division, elements of the 10th Armored Division's Combat Command B, and the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion were isolated. Most medical supplies had been captured on December 19th. Ammunition reserves were already critical. Winter conditions made every hour of exposure another casualty. The Supreme Commander had commanded millions of men across 3 continents. But watching the red circle on that map, he understood he was looking at potential catastrophe measured in a calendar square. December 23rd at the latest. Then, the paratroopers die. Eisenhower had spent 3 years managing subordinate generals across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France. Each had strengths. Each required different handling. Bradley was solid, methodical, dependable. Montgomery was effective but required constant diplomatic maneuvering. Hodges commanded 1st Army with steady professionalism. But the crisis at Bastogne demanded something none of those qualities could provide. It required operational audacity bordering on recklessness. It required a commander willing to disengage from active combat, rotate an entire army 90 degrees through winter conditions, and attack with coordinated force in under 72 hours. Eisenhower knew exactly one general capable of attempting that maneuver. George S. Patton, commander of 3rd Army. Their relationship had been exhausting. The slapping incidents in Sicily had nearly ended Patton's career. The Knutsford speech controversy had created diplomatic headaches. Patton's ego generated constant friction with other commanders. Managing him was like managing a brilliant, uncontrollable force of nature. But now, studying that red circle around Bastogne, Eisenhower faced uncomfortable clarity. Genius, however difficult to manage, might be the only asset capable of preventing total disaster. "Get me Patton," Eisenhower ordered. "Emergency conference tomorrow at Verdun. Tell him to bring plans for offensive operations north." December 20th, 1944. Reports from Bastogne continued deteriorating. German artillery pounded American defensive positions continuously. Casualties mounted with no capacity to evacuate wounded. The 101st Airborne's acting commander, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe, sent increasingly urgent situation reports. Ammunition for the division's 150mm howitzers was nearly exhausted. Infantry companies were down to handfuls of rifle cartridges. Tank destroyer crews rationed shells like water in a desert. Weather forecasts showed no break in cloud cover. No resupply drops possible. No close air support. The defenders were mathematically approaching zero capability. Eisenhower walked alone through Shaef headquarters after midnight. His aide, Harry Butcher, later recorded finding the Supreme Commander standing at a window, staring into darkness. Eisenhower said quietly, If we lose the entire 101st Airborne, if those men are annihilated because we couldn't reach them in time, the psychological impact will be devastating, not just military. These are the paratroopers who jumped into Normandy on D-Day. They fought through Market Garden, they're legends. If legends can be destroyed, what does that say about our chances? He turned from the window. Tomorrow, Patton makes his promise. Then we discover if promises can stop German panzers. December 19th, 1944, 1100 hours. The Caserne de Jardin-Fontaine Barracks, Verdun. The conference room was freezing despite a struggling pot-bellied stove. Eisenhower arrived looking ashen, accompanied by his deputy, British Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder. Lieutenant General Omar Bradley, commander of 12th Army Group, waited inside. Lieutenant General Jacob Devers attended from 6th Army Group. Eisenhower's intelligence chief, British Major General Kenneth Strong, spread situation maps across easels. Patton arrived exactly on time. Stern war face firmly in place, accompanied by Colonel Paul Harkins. Eisenhower opened the conference by attempting confidence he didn't entirely feel. The present situation is to be regarded as one of opportunity for us, and not of disaster. There will be only cheerful faces at this conference table. Patton's trademark bravado surfaced immediately. Hell, let's have the guts to let the bastards go all the way to Paris. Then we'll cut them off and really chew them up. No one laughed. Eisenhower moved directly to operational reality. The German breakthrough had created a 50-mile bulge in Allied lines. Bastogne was surrounded. The 101st Airborne faced annihilation within days. Then Eisenhower asked the question that would define the moment. How quickly can we mount a relief operation? Patton didn't hesitate. I can attack on December 22nd with 3 divisions. Silence filled the room. Other generals exchanged glances, some skeptical, some calculating if Patton was grandstanding again. To disengage the 4th Armored Division, the 26th Infantry Division, and the 80th Infantry Division from active combat in the Saar region, rotate them 90 degrees north, move them over 100 miles through December weather, and launch a coordinated combined arms attack in 48 hours exceeded anything attempted in modern mechanized warfare. Eisenhower's eyes locked onto Patton's face. His response, recorded by multiple witnesses, carried weight that made every man in the room understand this was no longer conference room theorizing. George, I'm not asking for optimism. I'm not asking for what might be theoretically possible. I'm asking what you can actually, genuinely accomplish. The lives of 10,000 American soldiers depend on your answer. Those paratroopers are surrounded, outnumbered, running out of ammunition, running out of medical supplies, running out of time. If you say you'll be there on December 22nd and you're not, they die, all of them. So I'll ask again, can you attack on December 22nd? Patton's response was immediate, without the usual theatrical flourish. I've already got 3 contingency plans prepared. My staff anticipated this meeting. We've wargamed the routes. On December 22nd, 4th Armored Division will attack north toward Bastogne. This isn't a promise. It's operational fact. Eisenhower studied Patton's expression, searching for the usual bravado, the exaggeration, the performance. Instead, he saw something rare from George Patton. Cold calculation without theatrics. The contingency plans were real. Patton had actually prepared for this scenario before arriving at Verdun. That level of tactical foresight impressed even Eisenhower. He made his decision. All right, George. You have your mission. Relieve Bastogne. You have complete operational freedom to execute as you see fit. Use whatever force structure you deem necessary. I'm trusting your judgment on tactics." Then Eisenhower leaned forward across the table, his voice dropping to a tone his staff rarely heard. The room temperature seemed to drop further. "But understand this perfectly, George. If you fail, if those paratroopers are lost because you couldn't deliver what you just promised, I will personally see that you never command troops again. Not relief from Third Army, not reassignment to training command, end of your military career. Am I absolutely clear?" Patton met his eyes without flinching. "Crystal clear, sir. I won't fail. 4th Armored will reach Bastogne on the 26th. Those paratroopers will be relieved." After Patton left to telephone his chief of staff with the code word activating his pre-planned operation, Eisenhower's chief of staff, General Walter Bedell Smith, asked quietly if he truly believed Patton could accomplish the impossible. Eisenhower replied, "That's precisely why I'm sending Patton. Impossible is what he does." December 20th through December 25th, 1944. Eisenhower entered the most excruciating week of his supreme command. Every few hours, situation reports arrived from Bastogne via radio, when atmospheric conditions briefly permitted transmission. Each report confirmed the defenders' situation was deteriorating toward collapse. December 22nd. German artillery bombardment continuous. The 101st Airborne's ammunition situation had become desperate. Some rifle companies reported fewer than 5 rounds per soldier. Medical supplies nearly exhausted. Wounded dying in freezing cellars from lack of treatment, lack of morphine, lack of surgical capacity. McAuliffe's famous reply to the German surrender ultimatum that morning had been defiant. To the German commander, nuts, the American commander. But defiance didn't stop panzers. That same day, Patton's Third Army attacked as promised. Progress was slower than hoped. Winter terrain, determined German resistance, and the sheer logistical complexity of the 90-degree pivot created friction at every level. The 4th Armored Division, spearheaded by Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams' 37th Tank Battalion, fought through villages south of Bastogne, but faced stiffening opposition. Eisenhower sent an encrypted message to McAuliffe. "Hold at all costs. Relief is coming." But privately, to his diary, he wrote the truth he couldn't speak aloud. "I trusted George because I had no alternative. Now I watch the clock and pray he breaks through before mathematics defeats courage." December 26th, 1944. 16:50 hours. The phone rang at SHAF headquarters. Eisenhower's aide answered, listened, then turned visibly pale. "Sir, it's General Patton. He says it's urgent." Eisenhower crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed the telephone. "George." Patton's voice came through crackling static. "Ike, we're through. 4th Armored made contact with the 101st at 16:50 hours. Lieutenant Charles Boggess from Abrams Battalion shook hands with Lieutenant Dwayne Webster from the 326th Airborne Engineer Battalion. The corridor is narrow, but it's open. We're pushing supplies and reinforcements through now. Bastogne is relieved." For several seconds, Eisenhower couldn't speak. His hand gripped the phone so hard his knuckles whitened. Staff officers in the room watched their Supreme Commander's face transform as tension that had been accumulating for 7 days suddenly released. His shoulders dropped. His eyes closed briefly. When he opened them again, witnesses later reported seeing tears he didn't attempt to hide. "George, say that again. I need to hear it again." "We're through to Bastogne. The Screaming Eagles held. They're battered to hell, but we got there in time." Eisenhower's voice cracked with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. "George, thank God. Thank you. You did it. You saved them." There was a pause on the line. Patton, never comfortable with sentiment, responded with characteristic deflection. "Just doing my job, Ike. Those paratroopers did the real work. 4th Armored just knocked on the door." Eisenhower shook his head, though Patton couldn't see it. "No, George. Don't diminish what you accomplished. You moved an army 90 degrees in blizzard conditions and broke through German lines in 4 days. That's not just doing your job. That's—" He searched for adequate words. "That's why you're invaluable. Despite everything, all our conflicts over the years, this is exactly why. When it mattered most, when 10,000 American lives hung in the balance, you delivered, not eventually, not with excuses, exactly when and how you promised." After ending the call, Eisenhower stood motionless. Then he turned to his assembled staff. His eyes were wet, tears he made no attempt to conceal. "Gentlemen, General Patton has just accomplished something I will remember for the rest of my life. He saved 10,000 American soldiers who were hours from annihilation. 4th Armored Division and the 101st Airborne have written a chapter in military history that will be studied for generations. And George Patton is the most difficult subordinate I have ever commanded. He is also, without question, one of the finest battlefield commanders America has ever produced." December 26th, late evening. Eisenhower immediately sent official messages to the 101st Airborne Division, commending their heroic defense against impossible odds. To 3rd Army, acknowledging their relief operation as operational excellence. To the War Department in Washington, reporting Bastogne's relief and the breaking of the German siege. But he also sent a personal telegram to Patton, drafted in his own hand. The text was precise, measured, and carried weight beyond its brevity. "George, words cannot adequately express my gratitude and admiration for what 3rd Army accomplished. You gave your word you would be there on the 26th. You kept that word against conditions everyone else considered prohibitive. In doing so, you saved not just 10,000 soldiers, but possibly the stability of our entire position in the Ardennes. Well done does not begin to cover it. This operation will be studied for decades as an example of operational excellence under extreme conditions. I am proud to have you under my command, Ike." To General George Marshall, Army Chief of Staff, Eisenhower was more candid. "George Patton just prevented what could have been my greatest failure as Supreme Commander. If Bastogne had fallen with an entire airborne division lost, questions would have emerged about Allied strategy, American military competence, and my leadership. Patton prevented that catastrophe. Whatever frustrations he generates, this operation justifies every difficult decision I've made to keep him in command." In the weeks and years following Bastogne's relief, Eisenhower's words about Patton evolved from immediate gratitude to considered historical judgment. In his official statement on December 27th, Eisenhower wrote, "The relief of Bastogne by elements of Lieutenant General Patton's 3rd Army represents one of the outstanding achievements of this war. The speed and coordination displayed demonstrates the highest levels of operational art. The defenders of Bastogne and their relievers have written a chapter in American military history." But to his personal diary, he recorded deeper reflection. "I have spent years managing George Patton's ego, controversies, and insubordination. There have been times I seriously considered relieving him of command. Bastogne answered all those doubts definitively. When it mattered most, when 10,000 American lives faced annihilation, George delivered. Not theoretically, not with qualifications. He delivered exactly what he promised, when he promised, against odds everyone else believed were impossible. That's the definition of great command. Years later, in his 1948 memoir, Crusade in Europe, Eisenhower devoted significant analysis to the operation. General Patton's relief of Bastogne stands as one of the war's pivotal moments. The rapid movement of 3 divisions, the coordination required, the aggressive execution under terrible conditions showcased American military capability at its finest. In a 1964 interview, 2 years before his death, Eisenhower was asked about his most agonizing command decisions during World War II. His response was immediate. Trusting George Patton to relieve Bastogne, I was betting everything. The lives of 10,000 paratroopers, the psychological stability of Allied forces, our operational momentum in the campaign. All of it rested on whether one difficult, controversial general could accomplish what everyone else considered impossible. He paused, and then continued with visible emotion even 2 decades later. When Patton called me on December 26th and said, "We're through to Bastogne," those 4 words might be the most important 4 words I heard during the entire war. They meant those paratroopers would live. They meant American forces could still execute complex operations under impossible conditions. They meant genius, however difficult to manage, was worth every frustration when it delivered miracles. Eisenhower's ultimate judgment, written in 1965, provided final historical verdict. Whatever else George Patton was, difficult, controversial, politically tone-deaf, he was also the man who refused to accept that those paratroopers were doomed. He promised he would save them, and he did. That promise, kept against impossible odds, defines both the man and the moment. Sometimes the most difficult people achieve the most extraordinary results. Bastogne proved that truth beyond any doubt. The relief of Bastogne remains studied at military academies worldwide, not just as tactical excellence, but as proof that operational audacity, executed with precision, can transform strategic disaster into defining victory.